Welcome back to the Acceptance Project podcast. I'm your host, Brian. Daylight savings time began on March 8th, and just like that, we nudged the clock forward 1 hour. One small click, one quiet agreement with time itself. An hour disappears overnight, and suddenly, evening lingers a little longer, like a guest who decides to stay for dessert. And while some of you are already missing those evenings when it's dark by 5 p.m., the rest of us are loving those 6:30 p.m. sunsets. Have you ever thought about daylight savings time and why we even have it? It seems every few years it becomes a hot topic issue up for debate. But still, here we are, springing forward in the spring and falling back in the fall. So if you're listening to this in your car or on the train as you head to work, maybe it's still a little dark outside at the moment. Or maybe you're enjoying the warmth of that late evening sun after work with a hot drink to knock the chill out of the air. Whatever you're doing, I hope you are relaxing and spending a few minutes with the rest of us as we talk about something we all need more of, and that's time. There's something almost poetic about the time shift we all participate in twice a year. We lose an hour of sleep, but we gain light. We sacrifice a little rest for a little radiance. It feels symbolic, doesn't it? As if the calendar is whispering, you made it. You survived the darker stretch. For some, those darker months are sacred. The early sunsets, the hush of winter evenings, the flicker of a fireplace casting shadows against the walls, thick sweaters, warm mugs, the world outside wrapped in stillness. Darkness can feel like a blanket tucked snug around the shoulders. It can feel protective, like a quiet room where no one expects anything. For some, winter is a sanctuary. For others, like myself, the long nights feel heavier, like walking through a hallway where the lights never quite turn on. The sun slips away before the workday ends, and it can feel as if the world is closing in early. The sky gets dark by late afternoon. Darkness in those moments does not feel cozy, it feels endless. We've all lived through dark seasons, not just the kind printed on a calendar. I'm talking about the ones that settle in the heart. Seasons when grief arrives uninvited and refuses to leave. When disappointment sits at the kitchen table longer than expected. Seasons when the phone calls change everything. Seasons when we wonder if the sun has misplaced our address. Sometimes darkness is not dramatic. It's subtle. It's the heaviness of doubt, maybe the disappearance of confidence. And yet here we are. March 8th came, the clocks moved, and the sun lingered. Now I'm going to be completely honest. I love the sunshine. Warm sand between my toes and warm summer nights. Nothing makes me happier than when the light stretches across the evening sky like a painter who has finally decided to use the brighter colors. It leans against our windows and says, I'm still here. It taps on our shoulders during late afternoon and reminds us that warmth has not retired. Sunshine has a personality also. It does not simply illuminate, it arrives with enthusiasm. It spills across the yard and wakes up those flowers that have been hibernating all winter, just waiting to make their grand entrance. You know the excitement you feel in the spring when you go outside and catch that first glimpse of those little stems peeking up from the ground? A few mornings ago, I was leaving for my morning class, and I noticed the small green stems barely sticking up from the brown mulch. And that moment made me want to go running down the street like Paul Revere announcing that spring was coming. The sunshine nudges the frost from the edges of the sidewalks. My favorite thing is when that warm spring summer chases old man winter out of the corners of each room after we have been able to fling the windows and doors open. And then there's that fresh scent of fresh cut grass. You know the one. It rises from the earth like a memory. The smell drifts through the air, and suddenly we are 10 years old again, racing bicycles down the street, convinced the day will never end. One of my happiest memories as a kid was having those weenie roasts. And for those who don't know what that is, we simply built a fire outside and roasted hot dogs over an open flame. Those springtime weenie roasts were the first sign that spring was just around the corner. Now, several years ago, I invited friends over for dinner, and no one knew what I had planned. When everyone arrived to see an empty table, they were confused. They became even more confused when I handed everyone a hot dog fork and said, "We're having an old-fashioned weenie roast." Now, if you've ever had a good old-fashioned weenie roast, then you know hot dog forks was nothing more than a good sturdy stick that you were so proud to have whittled the end into a very sharp point so you could roast the hot dog over the open flame. And of course, once you were finished, you could either roast a marshmallow or use it as a flaming sword, which now looking back doesn't seem safe and leaves me wondering who was the adult in charge of supervision. But regardless, it was a great time. Oh, and the day my friends came over to the unusual dinner by the fire, we even roasted pork chops over the flames, and at first everyone looked at me like I had lost my mind. By the end of the evening, everyone had consumed far more hot dogs and pork chops than they had anticipated. There's something about food roasted over an open flame that just tastes so different. There were no fancy napkins or table settings. It was just people standing around a fire roasting hot dogs and pork chops and laughing while they shared the late evening fire and warmth from the sun. Some of them still talk about that evening. The spring also does something to the soil. It softens it. That cool dirt between our fingers when we kneel down to plant something new. It crumbles gently as if it understands it is holding potential. The earth does not resist our touch. It opens, it receives it, it partners with us in hope. Planting is an act of faith. We press tiny seeds into dark soil and trust that light will find them. We bury what looks like nothing and believe it will become something. Is that not what we do in our own lives? We bury effort in unseen places. We water dreams that have not yet sprouted. We sit in darkness and trust that eventually warmth will reach us. Every season has a purpose. Winter teaches stillness. It teaches us to endure. It teaches us that not all growth is visible. Roots deepen in winter. Trees may look barren, but underground, they're strengthening, preparing, conserving energy for the burst of spring. Now, spring teaches renewal. It shows us that what looked lifeless was only resting. It reminds us that beginnings rarely announce themselves with fireworks. Sometimes they arrive quietly, like one extra hour of daylight. While I was writing this podcast, I glanced out the window of my home office, and I noticed a tree in my front yard had little tiny green sprouts, and they waved at me as if to say, "It's good to see you again." Summer celebrates abundance. It is laughter that spills out of open windows. It is suntanned skin and long conversations on porches. It is energy that feels almost electric. Autumn releases. It lets go with color. Leaves do not cling desperately to branches. They drift down in brilliant surrender, painting the ground with evidence that letting go can still be beautiful. But finding the purpose in a season can be difficult when we are inside of it. When the days are short and the nights feel long, it's hard to believe that light will return. When grief presses in, telling someone to wait for sunshine can feel hollow. There's a short story that has stayed with me for years, Brewster's Place. In it, a mother loses her child, the kind of loss that rearranges the furniture of the soul, the kind of loss that convinces a person the sun has permanently retired. She moves through her days in a shadow. The world continues around her, but she feels suspended. The light that once warmed her face now presses over her without meaning. She cannot imagine warmth returning. She can't picture a morning that does not ache. Grief can be like that. It can feel like living under an eclipse that never ends. The air grows colder, colors fade, even others' laughter sounds distant, as if it belongs to a different planet. But then morning comes, not because she demanded it, not because she was ready. Morning comes because, well, that's what mornings do. The sun rises whether we feel prepared for it or not. And in that gentle dawn, she notices something. The light does not erase her grief. It does not undo what was lost. But it touches her anyway. It rests on her shoulders. It filters through her window. It refuses to abandon her. Sometimes healing is not a sudden blaze of brightness. Sometimes it's only a thin ribbon of light along the horizon. Sometimes it's simply realizing that the sun showed up again. Darkness can convince us it's permanent. It speaks confidently. It tells us this is the new normal. It wraps itself around our thoughts and whispers that light was a temporary visitor. But daylight saving time reminds us that time itself bends toward light. We literally shift our clocks in pursuit of it. We decide it is worth losing an hour to gain brightness. What if in our own lives we decided to shift toward light? What if we looked at the darker seasons not as punishment, but as preparation? What if the cold months were not proof of absence, but proof of endurance? Dark days can be teachers. They show us what we cling to. They reveal who sits beside us when the sky turns gray. They strengthen muscles we did not know we had. And bright days are invitations. They invite us to step outside, to breathe deeper, to stretch our faces toward warmth, like the story I once heard about the sunflowers that refused to apologize for seeking light. Now, there's a story about sunflowers that feels almost too beautiful to belong to ordinary life. On bright days, sunflowers turn their faces toward the sun and trace its path across the sky with quiet devotion. From morning to evening, they follow the light as if it were a promise written just for them. But on cloudy days, when the sky turns gray and the sun hides behind a veil of clouds, it almost appears that the young sunflowers do something remarkable. Instead of drooping or turning inward, they face one another. They lean in, petal to petal, as if to say that if the sun is harder to find, they will help reflect what light remains. Now, many years ago, I was driving across Montana and I came upon a sunflower farm. I stopped to take a picture, and it was a cloudy day, but the sunflowers stood tall and bright, and it almost looked as if they were facing one another. I didn't realize this phenomenon at the time, but years later I remembered those sunflowers on that huge farm as I stood there looking out on a cloudy, cool evening just outside of Billings, Montana. Even when the sun is hidden, its light still exists. Sunflowers catch the faint glow and bounce it from one golden face to another. Alone, a single bloom might not capture much warmth. Together, they create a subtle exchange of radiance. They don't replace the sun. They don't pretend to be the source. They simply help one another hold on to it. There's something profoundly human in that image. There are seasons when our own skies feel heavy, when clarity fades and hope seems muted, like sunlight filtered through thick clouds. On those days, it's easy to assume the light has disappeared. It is tempting to lower our heads and withdraw, yet the sunflower offers another option. When the source of light feels distant, turn toward one another. On bright days, the independence feels effortless. When energy is high and joy is obvious, we stand tall and track our goals confidently. But on cloudy days, when grief drifts in or discouragement settles like fog, isolation can feel safer. The sunflower chooses differently. It leans closer. It seems to understand that our village of people can become a mirror when direct sunlight is hard to find. In our lives, that might look a lot like reaching out instead of retreating. A simple message that says, "Today feels heavy," a shared cup of coffee, sitting beside someone without trying to fix their pain. We're not meant to become each other's sun. That responsibility is way too great. But we can reflect warmth. We can amplify encouragement. We can offer perspective when someone else's view is clouded. Even on overcast days, the sun has not vanished. It remains steady and above the clouds. The sunflower cannot see it clearly, yet they trust it is there and make the most of what reaches them. That is faith in motion, not denial of the clouds, but confidence that light still exists beyond them. If you've ever flown, then you know exactly what I'm about to say. So many times I've been sitting in airports all over the country, looking out as the rain pours down. Maybe even the wind has whipped up and sent some piece of luggage off on its own trip, as if it got tired of waiting for the plane to depart and decided to hit the road. As I sat there waiting to board the plane on such a dreary day, it's hard to find any excitement for this trip. I board the plane, find my seat, get buckled in, and the plane takes off. The plane is racing down the runway, and then slowly you feel the front lift off the ground and watch the airport and surrounding city become smaller and smaller until the plane disappears into the clouds. Now, it looks like our windows have fogged over and there's nothing to see, but you can still hear the roar of the engines as it continues to lift that plane, weighing almost 1 million pounds into the sky. Then all of a sudden, you leave the clouds, and all you see is a beautiful blue sky with sunshine and large puffy clouds beneath the plane. All I can think of is what an amazing day at 35,000 feet in the sky. I wish I could have that same feeling when I'm sitting on the ground in the rain and remind myself we wouldn't appreciate the sun nearly as much if we didn't have some rain along the way. When the sky feels dim, instead of declaring the light gone forever, turn towards someone who still carries a little glow. When the weight of the season feels heavy, stand shoulder to shoulder and share what warmth you can. Acceptance may look like acknowledging that some days are overcast, but choose connection anyway. There's a quiet group of people who come alive when the leaves fall and the air turns sharp. While some of us look at the sky at 4:37 p.m. and say, "Why is it dark as midnight already?" They are lighting candles and smiling like they have been waiting all year for this moment. Winter, for them, feels like a soft boundary around the world. The wind may be rattling the windows, but indoors there is a small lamp giving off a warm glow. Thick socks and a hoodie so oversized it could double as an emergency housing. They wrap themselves in warm fabric, cradle a hot drink as if it holds the secret of the universe, and settle into the couch as if they're just successfully negotiated peace with the weather. For them, winter feels protective. The early darkness is not depressing. It's permission. Permission to cancel plans without guilt. Permission to slow down. Permission to say, "It's cold, I'm staying in," and have society nod in agreement. The world feels smaller in winter, more contained. Snow absorbs sound and turns entire neighborhoods into a quiet cathedral. There's something comforting about knowing the storm is outside while you're safely inside. The body relaxes, the shoulders drop, and the nervous system exhales. Winter lovers are drawn to that enclosure, the hush, the flicker of a fireplace that makes everything look softer and slightly dramatic, like life is being filmed in cozy lighting. A bowl of soup feels heroic. A blanket becomes a trusted companion. It's less about darkness and more about intimacy with stillness. Winter says, you don't have to bloom right now. You can root. You can rest. Now let me be honest. I respect that. I admire that. I even enjoy a good hoodie moment, but I am not wired that way. I do not dislike fall and winter because I fear closeness. I simply love the warmth of the sun. I want it on my face. I want it stretching across the evening sky at 8:30 p.m. like it forgot to check the clock. I want long days that feel like they refuse to end. When others are celebrating sweater weather, I'm quietly counting down to the first stubborn daffodil pushing through the soil. Give me heat, give me golden light, give me that late summer glow that makes everything look a little more hopeful. Some people feel safest wrapped in fleece while snow taps politely at the window. I feel safest when the sun is bold and unapologetic, when the light spills into every corner of the room and refuses to be subtle. That is my cocoon. That is my security. Warmth stretching across the day like it has nowhere else to be. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Some of us recharge in the hush of winter. Others recharge in the blaze of summer. Some find comfort in candlelight. Others need full daylight flooding the room. Safety does not wear one uniform. For some, it's a blanket and a blizzard. And for others, it's sunshine and sandals. Just don't ask me to celebrate the 4:30 p.m. sunset like it's a gift. I'll be over here waiting for July, sunscreen in hand, happily squinting toward the light. Spring is in the air, and I can feel it everywhere. Not in a subtle, polite way either. Not in a maybe it's coming soon kind of way. I mean it in that bold, window down, birds are holding concerts at 5:30 a.m. kind of way. The air changes, it stretches, it smells like possibility and lightly damp soil, like the earth just took a deep breath and decided to try again. There used to be a laundry detergent commercial where a woman danced to her house singing about freshness. She twirled past billowing curtains, lifted a towel like it had delivered life-changing news, and somehow made folding fitted sheets look like an Olympic sport. The floors sparkled, the laundry sparkled, she sparkled. Apparently, one capful of detergent transformed her into a Broadway lead with perfect lighting and zero laundry-related resentment. Now, I don't dance like that. No amount of mountain meadow lavender breeze has ever made me dance a jig down a hallway. If I toss a towel in the air, it's usually because I missed the hamper, and if I spin in my kitchen, it's because I stepped on something mysterious and survival instincts kicked in. But spring does something to me. I will not choreograph a musical number in my living room, but I will absolutely stand in my yard squinting at a tiny green shoot, pushing through the dirt and whisper, "You made it." I will open windows with excessive enthusiasm and dramatically inhale the scent of fresh cut grass like it is a luxury fragrance called Finally. Of course, I will also double up on my allergy pills, but if that is the price to pay for spring, I will accept my burdens and enjoy the sunshine. And of course, the sunlight lingers longer in the evening, stretching across the floor like it's reclaiming territory, and I find myself walking slower outside just to soak it in. The birds act like they just signed recording contracts. The trees that looked suspiciously lifeless 2 weeks ago are suddenly showing off tiny leaves like they have been planning this reveal for months. Even the air feels lighter, as if winter quietly packed its bags and left without taking the good towels. After months of gray skies and early sunsets, the light stays. It does not rush off at 4:30 p.m. like it forgot something in the car. It lingers, it leans in, it feels generous. Spring does not give me detergent level joy, but it does bring me back to life. My shoulders loosen, my breath deepens. I start considering projects I absolutely do not need. I rearrange furniture, I buy plants I'm wildly underqualified to care for. Winter asks us to endure. Spring invites us to begin again, and that invitation feels contagious. So, no, I won't be starring in any commercials anytime soon. My laundry will remain folded with average enthusiasm. But when spring arrives, something in me wakes up. Windows open, light pours in, hope stretches out across the evening sky and refuses to leave early. And if you happen to see me standing in my yard for no apparent reason, just staring at a patch of grass like it personally accomplished something remarkable, don't worry. Spring is in the air, and apparently that is more than enough to make me glow without a single drop of detergent. As we close today, think about that small click on March 8th, and of course, that magical day that's coming up on Friday, March 20th, just in case you had forgotten. 1 hour forward, one simple shift, nothing dramatic, no fireworks, just a quiet decision to lean toward the light. Maybe stepping into the light is not a grand transformation. Maybe it's not pretending winter never happened. Maybe it's simply one intentional movement toward warmth, a choice to open the window, a choice to text a friend. Even if grief still sits at the table, the sun can sit there too. The darkness you survived did not disqualify you from brightness. It prepared you to appreciate it. So wherever this finds you, take a breath and then let the light touch you. Let it remind you that seasons change, roots deepen, and mornings still come. If this episode stirred something in you, if it made you breathe a little deeper or notice the light lingering a bit longer, I want to invite you into something bigger. Spring is not meant to be experienced alone. New beginnings are contagious. Hope spreads. Light multiplies. One of the simplest ways to celebrate a new season is to invite someone else into it. Share this episode with a friend who has been walking through a long winter. Send it to someone who needs a reminder that brighter days are possible. Post it, text it, tag someone, start a conversation. Think of it as hosting a celebration where the windows are open, sunlight is pouring in, and there's room for everyone at the table. When you share this podcast, you're opening the door and saying, come in, there's warmth here, there's possibility here, there's hope here. You never know who might need that invitation. By sharing, you're not just passing along an episode, you are extending a hand and saying, let's step into this new season together. So if this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, leave a review, and invite someone else to join the party, because every good celebration is brighter when more people are gathered in the light. And just remember, even when the night feels long, the light is already on its way. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of one another. The Acceptance Project podcast is a production of Bridging Success, LLC. To learn more about the podcast and our work, please visit bridgingsuccess.com. This podcast and its contents are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. I'm Dr. Brian Gross, but I'm not a licensed therapist. The topics and opinions shared by me and any guests are our own and should not replace professional or medical advice. If you're seeking mental health support, medical guidance, or help with personal matters, please reach out to a licensed professional who can provide the individual support you need.